Welcome. Today we are undertaking a detailed exploration of, well, a true giant of mid-century cinema, the 1961 American romantic comedy, Breakfast at Tiffany's.
It's one of those films that really demands a closer look, not just for its undeniable charm and style, but for the complex and sometimes very troubling story behind how it was made and what its legacy became.
Right, and its cultural footprint is it's so much bigger than its runtime.
It really is.
So our mission today is very specific. We're going to focus entirely on the anatomy of that creation, that legacy. We're looking at the history of how the film was made, the choices that were prioritized during its production.
And what its profound, lasting impact has been on everything: cinema, fashion, music.
Exactly. We're not going to be walking through the plot. We're really concentrating on the cultural effects, the history, the casting, and, its relevance even today.
Yes, we're sort of pulling apart the film's DNA. And to set the stage, I think we should start with the basics. Its release, its immediate success. Because understanding how commercially viable it was from the start is really key to understanding the powerful legacy it built.
Okay, let's unpack that history. The film was directed by Blake Edwards, and it premiered on October 5, 1961. It was distributed by Paramount Pictures. And right away, this was a massive financial hit.
It was a huge success, especially when you look at the numbers for the time. The production budget was about $2.5 million.
Right.
It then went on to gross $14 million worldwide. So that confirmed it as a commercial powerhouse from day one. And that financial victory, well, it justified the major creative liberties they took, which we'll get into.
And that success, it wasn't just commercial, was it? It was also critically decorated, especially for its music. The film got 5 Academy Award nominations.
Mm-hmm. And it secured 2 major wins that really sealed its place in cinematic history. One was for Best Music Score for Henry Mancini. And the second, and maybe the more famous win, was for Best Song for Moon River.
It's impossible to imagine the film without that song, without that score. But its status, it goes beyond those initial awards, right? It was cemented much later.
It was. In 2012, the Library of Congress recognized its profound importance by preserving it in the U.S. National Film Registry.
And it's a huge deal.
It's a powerful marker. It signifies a cultural significance that goes way beyond box office numbers or even those first Oscars. It's a recognition that the film is historically, culturally, and aesthetically important to, the fabric of American society.
So we have this film that was a commercial hit, a masterpiece of musical composition, and eventually deemed important enough for national preservation. But the path to get there was paved with some really significant, conscious, and often radical changes to the original source material.
And that brings us right to our first major section, that transformative journey from Truman Capote's 1958 novella to the final film. This is, fundamentally a story of adaptation driven almost entirely by commercial pressures.
The starting point, of course, was Capote's novella. And when the producers, Martin Juro and Richard Shepard, first started development, they hired a screenwriter named Sumner Locke Elliott.
Right, and his script was actually quite faithful to Capote's book.
But that was the issue.
That faithfulness was exactly the problem for the producers. They saw that the source material, as Capote wrote it, was probably too dark, too nuanced, maybe too challenging for the broad 1960s audience they were aiming for.
So Elliott was out, and they brought in George Axelrod.
And hiring Axelrod, that was a clear signal of their intent. He was already known in Hollywood for taking successful but structurally complex source material and making major changes for the screen. He did it with The 7-Year Itch.
His specialty was making things more appealing to the masses.
Precisely. And those changes weren't subtle. They fundamentally altered the genre. Axelrod worked with the producers to radically shift the plot and the tone, moving it away from that darker, more ambiguous novella and firmly into the territory of a heartwarming, if a little eccentric, romantic comedy.
And that change in tone, it required a massive overhaul of the characters and their relationships. The biggest shift, the one that really changes the story's meaning, was what they did with the narrator.
Oh, completely. The novella has this unnamed narrator who is, implied to be gay. He's more of a distanced, observant witness to Holly Golightly's life.
And in the film, he's replaced entirely.
Entirely. By a named, conventionally attractive, heterosexual male love interest, Paul Varjak, played by George Peppard.
And the sources are really clear that this was an incredibly calculated decision. It was made for what they called audience approval. By turning the narrator into a standard love interest, they could get rid of a lot of the complexity and subtext.
Exactly. The subtext related to sexuality, loneliness, the transactional relationships, all of that was central to Capote's work. The novella, by using a gay, observant narrator, it gives you this really complex lens to view Holly's life.
You see her as this sophisticated, ambitious, but also deeply vulnerable survivor.
Right, operating on the fringes of society. But by replacing him with a romantic lead, the film essentially says, this isn't about the harsh realities of New York life, it's about finding love.
They replaced complexity with a clear romantic story. They added new characters, they reduced the gay subtext. It just made the story clean, aspirational, and commercially safe for a mainstream audience.
An audience that, at the time, was much less accepting of the themes Capote was exploring. And the shift, it wasn't just a screenwriting choice, it was cemented by the director.
John Frankenheimer was the initial director, but he was replaced.
He was, and that switch was all about star power. Frankenheimer had worked on development for 3 months, but Audrey Hepburn's agent requested a higher-profile director.
Which led to Blake Edwards.
The ideal choice for this new direction. He was a master of high-end commercial comedy, and crucially, he fully supported Axelrod's major changes. His approval confirmed the central mission. This film had to be adjusted for maximum broad mainstream audience approval.
And the result of all this rewriting and reshaping was, of course, Truman Capote's famous, intense displeasure.
He was famously angry. He felt Paramount had double-crossed him, especially when it came to the casting.
Right. And his biographer, Gerald Clark, I think he summed it up best.
He did. Clark said the film transformed the story from a cautionary tale about a little girl lost, a story warning about fragility of that kind of life, into a Valentine to free-spirited women.
And that distinction is so critical for you, the listener, to understand. The film simplifies Holly's character arc. It makes her endearing, aspirational, a symbol of chic freedom.
Whereas the book was a much darker character study. It showed the emotional costs of that kind of radical, almost desperate independence.
So when Capote complained, he wasn't just upset about plot points. He was protesting the loss of his character's entire essence.
And the emotional weight of his original themes.
Oh.
Which brings us directly to the heart of the casting process, which is just full of these incredible cinematic what-ifs.
Section 2. Let's get into those career-defining roles and the near misses that could have completely changed the look and feel of this iconic film. And we have to start with Holly Golightly.
Of course. Audrey Hepburn, who for so many people is Holly Golightly, she actually had a lot of hesitation at first.
Really?
Yeah. She cited difficulty playing such an extroverted, almost theatrical character. It's a sharp contrast to her usual, quieter, more contained screen persona.
That's fascinating. Her performance is so good, but the shadow of another major star looms large over this role.
It does. The sources all highlight that Truman Capote intensely, vehemently wanted Marilyn Monroe for the role.
He believes she was the one who best reflected the true essence of the character he'd created. The chaotic, vulnerable, but tough Holly.
In fact, when Axelrod was first writing the screenplay, he was actually required to tailor the script specifically for Monroe.
Can you even imagine that? A version of Breakfast at Tiffany's tailored for Marilyn Monroe. It would have been a completely different film.
Oh, completely. Much different. Probably much closer to Capote's cautionary tale. But Monroe declined the role.
And this was on the advice of her acting coach, Lee Strasberg.
Yes, Strasberg reportedly suggested that playing a character who could be seen as a lady of the evening would damage Monroe's image at the time.
So she chose the Misfits instead.
She did. And that advice, prioritizing image preservation over a challenging role, it's a really interesting cultural moment. It says a lot about how female stars were categorized in early 1960s Hollywood, the pressure they were under to maintain a certain moral profile.
It's a true sliding doors moment in cinema history. If Monroe had said yes, Hepburn wouldn't have had this career-defining role, and the film's tone might have been, well, much closer to what Capote wanted.
And it wasn't just those two. Shirley MacLaine was also offered the part, but she chose to do Two Loves instead.
Kim Novak turned it down, too.
She did. So the producers were clearly aiming for absolute Hollywood royalty for this role.
Okay, so let's move to the male lead, Paul Varjak, the character who replaced the original narrator. George Peppard wasn't the first choice either.
Not at all. Steve McQueen was offered the role first, but had to decline because of a contract with United Artists.
And Jack Lemmon?
He was approached but was unavailable. Robert Wagner was also heavily considered, so Peppard eventually got the role. And looking back, the film was just an incredible career springboard for so many of the cast.
For Hepburn, it was monumental. Her performance, despite her own worries about it, got rave reviews and became her most memorable, most identifiable role.
Absolutely. Time magazine later said that Breakfast at Tiffany's truly set Hepburn on her Hollywood course, defining the kind of elegant, sophisticated role she would be known for.
And for George Peppard, it was just as important. It really helped to revive his movie career after his earlier film, The Subterraneans, hadn't done so well.
Right. Playing opposite Hepburn gave him a huge boost. And we can't overlook Buddy Ebsen. His appearance is brief but so effective as Doc Golightly.
Holly's older husband.
Exactly. And the positive reception to his grounded, sort of poignant performance was a direct factor in him getting a massive television role.
That role being Jed Clampett on the Beverly Hillbillies.
The very one, which premiered the next year, 1962, and ran for almost a decade. It just shows you, even a small, memorable part in a cultural phenomenon like this can change an actor's entire career trajectory.
The whole production just became this cultural touchstone, which takes us into the details of our third section. The enduring cultural footprint of the film, the style, the sound, the visual iconography that is still instantly recognizable all over the world.
Let's start with just the logistics of creating that iconic New York feel. Filming started on October 2, 1960, and while a lot of the exterior shots were done right there in New York City.
Fifth Avenue, of course.
Right, but the vast majority of the interiors were actually filmed on the Paramount Studios lot in Hollywood.
Which is pretty standard. But that opening sequence outside the Tiffany & Co. store, that shot has become legendary. And the stories about filming it are, well, they're conflicting.
They're fascinatingly conflicted. There are two dramatically different stories about how they got that famous shot of Holly getting out of the cab. One report suggests the shoot was just a complete nightmare.
What kind of problems?
Significant issues with crowd control, which you can imagine. Audrey Hepburn's documented dislike of the Danish pastry she had to eat over and over.
I'd heard that.
And even a very serious incident where a crew member was nearly electrocuted. So this version of the story suggests it was just chaos.
But there's another version.
In direct contrast, another report claims the whole thing was captured incredibly quickly, very smoothly, because of an unexpected lull in city traffic that morning.
So it just happened.
According to that story, yes. Traffic quieted down, and they just got the shots they needed, almost effortlessly.
Wow. Whether it was chaotic or calm, the final image is just pure cinematic magic. That ambiguity is almost a metaphor for Holly's character herself.
That's a great way to put it. Now moving to the sound. The score is just undeniable. Composed and conducted by Henry Mancini, lyrics by Johnny Mercer. And the song Moon River is arguably the film's single most lasting contribution to pop culture.
And the story behind its creation is Hollywood legend, right?
It is. Mancini said he was trying to figure out the enigmatic nature of Holly Golightly, her sadness, her flightiness. And then, in a burst of inspiration, he wrote the song in half an hour.
What's so brilliant about it is how it was tailored specifically for Audrey Hepburn's limited vocal range.
Meticulously. Mancini drew inspiration from songs she'd sung in Funny Face back in '57 to make sure the arrangement would highlight her unique, gentle voice. The song's structure, that meandering quality, it just perfectly reflects Holly's nomadic life.
And the fact that we even have it in the final film is because of an internal fight.
A huge fight. After a test preview, the head of production at Paramount, Martin Rankin, wanted Moon River scrapped. He wanted it replaced with something more conventional, sung by a professional singer.
But the producers refused.
They refused. Richard Shepard and Martin Gero knew how central it was to the film's emotional core. Some stories even say Hepburn herself stepped in and insisted the song stay. They fought for it, and they saved a piece of cinema history.
And Mancini's work on the whole score was so sophisticated. Time magazine described how he used a walking bass to give it momentum, but then extended the melodies with choral and string variations for emotional complexity.
He was weaving in different genres. They noted he varied it with the brisk sounds of combo jazz, which gave it that modern New York edge. But Moon River itself was sobbed by a plaintive harmonica, then repeated by strings and hummed by a chorus. It's just auditory perfection.
And it certainly cleaned up at the awards. The Oscar for Best Song, several Grammys, including Record of the Year and Song of the Year, a true phenomena.
And beyond the sound, the visual iconography is maybe even more powerful. Hepburn's look, the high chignon, the oversized cigarette holder, it's one of the most iconic images of 20th century American cinema.
And we have to talk about the fashion, specifically the Givenchy black dress. It's more than a dress. It's cited as one of the most iconic clothing items of the 20th century.
Glamour magazine called it the most famous little black dress of all time. The concept already existed, of course, but Tiffany's elevated it into this symbol of accessible yet aspirational elegance.
And the market value of that dress is just staggering. One of the three, designed by Givenchy for Hepburn, was sold at a Christie's auction in 2006.
For an astonishing amount, 467,200 pounds, which is about 947,000 US dollars at the time.
7 times the reserve price.
Exactly. A simple black dress selling for nearly $1 million decades later. It wasn't just fashion, it was a cultural relic.
And the influence of that fashion, it extended into other media too. A second Givenchy dress from the film, the one with the wide-brimmed hat, directly inspired the comic book design of Catwoman by artist Adam Hughes.
And that influence later shows up in cinema, in The Dark Knight Rises. Hepburn's style became this shorthand for sophisticated, slightly mysterious female power.
And of course, the branding was huge. The film cemented Tiffany & Co.'s profile. Hepburn wore the priceless Tiffany yellow diamond in publicity photos.
And her accessories became instantly popular. The Oliver Goldsmith sunglasses, they were so sought after, they were re-released in 2011 for the film's 50th anniversary. It was just a masterclass in brand integration.
But for all this enduring positive cultural influence on fashion, music, and aspiration, we have to move to the part of the film's legacy that has caused the most significant and lasting damage to its reputation.
Yes. Section 4 is something we must approach with the gravity it demands, the enduring controversy surrounding the character of Iwa Yunioshi.
It centers on Mickey Rooney's portrayal of Holly's Japanese landlord. The performance involved yellow face, heavy exaggerated makeup, and a prosthetic mouthpiece. This depiction has been widely and correctly labeled as a racist caricature since the 1990s.
And it's essential to understand that this was a conscious production decision, driven by the director Blake Edwards. He'd been Rooney's roommate and wanted to use the character for broad physical comedy.
He expanded the role from the novella
Significantly, which meant this deeply offensive character got far more screen time, amplifying the damage. And this decision was met with immediate conflict from within the production team.
Producer Richard Shepard saw the problem right away. He wanted to recast the role with a Japanese actor.
But Edwards, the director, overruled him. He insisted on Rooney. It just highlights the power dynamics on a film set, where a director's vision, even a deeply problematic one, could override producers' concern.
And the pushback didn't stop there. The screenwriter, George Axelrod, also clashed with Edwards over the Yunioshi scenes. He was so bothered that he got Audrey Hepburn to come back and reshoot some of her scenes for free.
His hope was that with new footage, they could persuade Edwards to edit out or at least reduce Yunioshi's most offensive scenes. But again, Edwards overruled them, preserving the performance in the final cut.
What's particularly shocking is how Paramount tried to misrepresent Rooney's identity to the public before the film came out. Promotional materials claim the character would be played by an upcoming Japanese comedian.
They even invented a fake name for this person, Ohayo Arigato, which is just hello and thank you in Japanese. It shows a bizarre level of deception to hide what they were doing.
Other press releases had fake quotes from this fabricated performer, written in phonetically broken English to match the caricature. The deception only ended when Rooney himself publicly revealed his involvement.
In the decades since, as the cultural conversation around representation has evolved, people involved in the production started to express regret. Richard Shepard later apologized publicly for the performance.
He said he would be thrilled with the film if they could just change Mickey. He reiterated that he'd pushed for a Japanese actor, but was overruled.
And Blake Edwards, the man who made the final decision, he also expressed regret later in his career. He said he would give anything to recast Rooney and wished he had never done it. He acknowledged he couldn't undo the damage.
It's important to note, though, that Mickey Rooney himself had a very complicated defense. In 2008, he said he was heartbroken by the criticism.
He claimed the director intended it only as comedy, and that at the time, there were no complaints. He said he wouldn't have taken the role if he'd thought it was offensive.
But the criticism is persistent and well-founded, regardless of intent. Film historian Robert Osborne called the caricature such a racial slur and blamed Edwards, calling the portrayal totally embarrassing.
The film is now routinely used as a textbook example of Hollywood's long and destructive history of racist depictions of East Asians. and the impact was felt immediately by the Asian community.
The sources confirm this. It's noted in materials around the 1993 Bruce Lee biopic, Dragon. The Bruce Lee story, that Bruce Lee and his future wife Linda walked out of a screening of the film when they saw Rooney's performance.
And this controversy continues to prompt active protests even today. In 2011, a group of Asian American viewers protested a screening in Brooklyn for the film's 50th anniversary.
So the legacy of its style and music has to be acknowledged alongside the legacy of this harmful caricature. The tension between the film's achievements and its deep flaws is central to understanding its complex place in cultural history.
Absolutely. As we draw this exploration to a close, you have to look at the totality of its impact. Breakfast at Tiffany's is an undisputed cultural milestone. Its influence on fashion, popularizing the little black dress, and the magnificent music of Henry Mancini. It all ensures its historical importance.
And the power of the core story is still relevant. The character of Holly Golightly continues to attract new interpretations.
We've seen various stage adaptations over the years. A musical in 2004, a London play in 2009 with Anna Friel, and another in New York in 2013 starring Emilia Clarke. The source material endures, even if the film remains the definitive cultural version.
We spent our time today focusing on the production, the casting battles, the conflicts over the script, and the controversies that shaped this film. We saw how it achieved massive success by radically departing from Truman Capote's darker novella to ensure audience approval.
And this intentional transformation, turning a nuanced cautionary tale into a simple, heartwarming romance, it raises an important question for you, the listener, to consider. We've seen the incredible commercial triumph that resulted from this artistic simplification.
So consider how often truly successful, culture-defining milestones in cinema depend not on being faithful to the source material, but on the successful commercial transformation of complicated art into widely appealing entertainment.
Does simplification, which is often driven by market demands, inherently increase a work's chance of becoming a global, lasting cultural icon? It's a fascinating question to think about with the adaptations and remakes you see today.
Indeed, it puts the whole concept of fidelity to the source material in a very different light.
Thanks for listening.